A correct climate narrative is efficient to share information correctly to more audiences, stakeholders, and to express not only the urgency of the climate crisis, but the steps taken to protect our planet from several fields, such as policy, research, industries, and the general public. I'm Asia, and you're listening to Rethinking Climate. We investigate how the climate crisis is spoken about. Today, we are very honored to have Carlo Corazza. He's spokesperson and head of the European Parliament's offices in Italy. So thank you for being with us today.
Thank you.
So you have worked as well also during Antonio Tajani's presidency at the European Parliament, where you also coordinated Mediatic Relations Press and worked with DG Com, which for those listening is the European Parliament's communication offices in Brussels, and collaborated with the university and think tanks. So let's go for the first questions. What do you think are key elements to communicate properly and efficiently to an audience who may not be as informed of what is happening within the EU bubble, and also about the actions that the EU is taking?
Thank you. Thank you very much for this opportunity. I'm really delighted to have this conversation with you. I think the most important thing is to be divulgative, not to expect that everybody can understand a bureaucratic languages or a too technical element of a communication. So to be simple, to be clear, to make a lot of example, and to be very open to questions from journalists, and also to study a lot. I mean, because to be simple, to be divulgative, you need to understand very well what you are trying to explain to the public. And bear in mind that you're not talking to experts, you are not talking, as you were saying, to the Brussels bubble, but you have to talk to the Italian, to the German, to the French, to the Greek, etc. That Europe is not Brussels, Europe is not Luxembourg, Europe is the region, the municipalities, and the citizens. And the citizens should look at us not like something far, or do things which are not clear and far for their priority. So if you're working on climate change, if you're working on energy transition, if you're working on circular economy, they have to understand that this means a better life for them, more job, more economic growth, more economic development, not just be an abstract goal in 2050. They should really understand what this means in the day-by-day life.
So since you actually do mention this, and there are some of the points also included in the Green New Deal, what are the challenges there?
I mean, we need not just a revolution in our industry or in our agriculture. We need a revolution in our mind, in our way of thinking, in our way of consuming and traveling, and I mean, in our behavior. And we will never be able to reach the targets provided in the climate law. So less emission in 2030 and carbon neutrality by 2050 without this kind of revolution. And another revolution we need is also an economic revolution. We need to understand that without a European debt, without a substantial part of public investment, we will not be able to change our economy. We will not able to start this transition and to do this deep transformation of our industry. And if I make an example, if you have to cut emission in the building sector, you will have to restructure hundreds of thousands of buildings, and we have the technology to do that. And we will save a lot of energy if we do that, because 40% of our consumption of energy depends to the inefficiency of our building. But you need a huge amount of investment to do that. And if you need to do that by 2030, because this is the first way to cut emission is building, because on transport it will be much more difficult, you really need to invest billion and billion. What Italy, for instance, is doing with a very popular measure, which is called 110% on eco bonus and sisma bonus. So if the European leadership agreed on creating a good debt, within brackets, and to invest a massive amount of a million, and to explain to the taxpayer why we need to do this kind of investment, then I think that the Green Deal will be a great success. It will not just help us to save the planet, but also to create jobs and to move the economy. And at the end of the day, in the long term, it will be also a great economic success, because we are dependent from the Russian gas or from the oil of the Middle East. And to consume less oil and less gas will make us not just more independent, but also help our economy to grow faster and with our own technology.
Great. So there are many, we can say, comments about how the EU is actually approaching these policies or decisions, or where funding should go and so on. So what do you think is the hardest information to share and communicate with the EU countries about these changes that are happening, are needed?
I think the main point is, I think, the environmental dumping. People ask why we should put so much pressure on our industry, on our agriculture, and also on our way of traveling and our transport system, if then the Chinese can continue to produce steel with coks, or the America just doesn't care, or if, I don't know, the Russian will continue to use oil and gas, etc. So we have to demonstrate that this will be fair, that we will take our burden, we'll take our responsibility, but we will also act to push the other to take their responsibility, and not just asking or begging, but imposing duties at the frontier to the other economy which are not on our same line. And this is just to avoid the catastrophe, because if we do not that, there will be just a delocalization. A steel producer will just leave Europe and go in China or in other parts, and this will increase the emission, not cut the emission. So we really need to impose a level playing field on the fight against climate change. Without this level playing field, our citizen will feel that this will not work, and that this is not unfair, and they will be right, because we cannot have a Green Deal without the diplomacy of the Green Deal. And when I talk about diplomacy, I'm talking also about anti-dumping and duties.
So what are some of the improvements you would like to see in the communication of what is happening about the EU, maybe also from the EU bubble, but also from national member states?
But I mean, for the member state, it's quite easy. I mean, they should stop the blame game. They should stop to say that everything is wrong, come from the Brussels bureaucrats. And I mean, they are a co-legislator. I mean, the first things that should be avoided is to say that Europe is a bureaucracy. We are not a bureaucracy. We are a great democracy. We are a liberal democracy. The most important moment for the European Union is when the citizens vote every 5 years. They elect their representative. Any single piece of legislation in the European Union is approved by two chambers, the European Parliament and Council of Ministers. And you can make a parallel. I mean, it's not very correct from a constitutional point of view, but you can imagine the parliament like the American Congress and the Council of Ministers like the Senate. So one chamber represents the people, the other chamber represents the state, the member state. So if you have to blame someone, you have to blame the democracy, which approved certain rules, certain rule, and decided to to allocate the budget in a certain way. So the European leader, the national leader, should take their responsibility and say, okay, we did a mistake, or we did, or to defend that choice. I mean, because if they made certain choice when they meet in Brussels at the Council of Ministers of the European Parliament, they should assume the responsibility of the decision they take. This is the basis of the democracy. Another fundamental element of the democracy is to explain why you take certain choice. We were talking before. And you cannot just explain things in a cold and distant way. You cannot leave to bureaucrats or to spokesperson the role to explain. You are a politician. You should promote participation, because the participation of citizens is the blood of the democracy. Without participation, a democratic power cannot survive. So a politician should sell a dream, should sell a vision, and on this vision, on this direction, we should push people to participate. So if I could suggest something to national and European politicians, is please make the European dream again. There is something on which we can dream to change the planet, to change our way to consume, to defend the liberal democracy. These are really dreams, at least for my generation. When I was 18, I traveled in Poland, in Hungary, and I saw people of my same age who would not be able to travel. I mean, these things exist again in Turkey or in Russia at our border. So we can explain that we are here to defend the dignity and the freedom of the people, and this is a fantastic dream to promote.
So maybe this question is for those listeners who are not exactly aware of how the European Parliament's offices work in Italy or within the other EU headquarters. But we could say, what are the tools that the European Parliament uses to communicate its mission to the citizens?
I mean, first of all, we engage on social media. We have a platform, together.eu, where we engage with citizens, and we ask citizens to become our ambassador. And we have a similar program also for school. We ask students to become our ambassador and to involve other students. Then we have a lot of media partners. So we have newspaper, television work with us on several teams, on several debates. We organize a lot of debate with members of the European Parliament and economic stakeholder, representative of the national governments. And this is very important for a legislature to have an idea what's the stakeholder expects, and to present your vision on what in which direction you want to go in this specific sector. It has been extremely important during the pandemic to have a continued confrontation between the tourist sector, agricultural sector, infrastructure sector, banking sector, etc., between the representative of the European Parliament, the Commission, the Italian government, and the economic and social stakeholder. What we also try to do is to avoid disinformation and fake news. 3 days ago, we were obliged to write a letter to Draghi because during a program in Rai 2, there was just a set of fake news on the fact that Europe wants to push the Italian to drink wine with water or to eat insects, etc. So it's a stupid example, but I made it because it showed the lack of responsibility of certain political leaders. Because, I mean, a letter like that, where you clearly say that, of course, any critics against the European Union is more than legitimate. This is the soul of democracy. But you have to do it respecting the reality, not inventing things or manipulating the reality, which is also the basis of the democracy. And a certain political leader accused us of censura, or, I mean, which is a good example of how how we are at risk in a way, because if the political culture now mix a pledge to correct information with a censorship, I mean, we really have a lot of things to do. This is a little bit the new way of populistic culture in politics, which could be dangerous also for the survival of the European Union. We saw what's happened with the Brexit. Brexit happened after a decade of fake news, completely invented, and British citizens which were honestly convinced that the European Union was a sort of monster, and then at the end of the day, this was a manipulation of the votes, because the journalists did not do the job in a professional way. A part of the media did not do its job, the sentinel of the liberal democracy.
So, but this comes from research that I've seen lately. There are quite a few initiatives to spread a stronger structure of communication about EU policies to smaller towns or smaller communities or so on. So, and some citizens, as I've read online, feel like that the digital is useful to a certain point because, of course, it engages with a lot of communities quite fast. But what about those maybe older who don't use technology, or smaller towns that don't really look at technology and digital platforms as a way to inform themselves? Yeah.
As I say at the beginning, we have to reach people. We have to fill the gap between the institution and the people, not just new generation, but everybody, every citizen. And you have to go local also for this. So that's why we have office in all member states. In Italy, we have 2 offices, one in Milan, one in Rome, because you also need the territorial proximity. I mean, when the pandemic will end, we will start to travel again, and we'll go in the different region, different town, meet people, discuss with them, try to explain, etc. Because this is also very important, to talk with local media and also to meet people and to listen to them and to answer to their questions. So, I mean, of course, we are not an army, but within our limit possibility, we try to do whatever we can to really be available. Europe should be available.
Yes.
And the people should feel that they are part of something. I mean, they are part of something which have a lot of imperfection, like all the things made by human, but it's their imperfection. It's the natural perimeters of certain decision.
Yes.
And at the end of the day, I think that behind all I think we all feel European because we have a common history together. We have 3,000 years of history. And when we study the history of the Greek against the Persian, we all feel like the Greek. We feel the Greek against the Persian Empire. Because in this precise moment, we started to develop a European identity.
And so to our listeners, what advice would you give them when it comes to learning more about sustainability policies applied by the European Union or the European Parliament, and how they could feel more participant within this big identity?
I would say something quite obvious. I think my advice is to be a citizen. That to be a citizen, you cannot be passive. You cannot give for granted correct information or participation, or even the fact that you can vote. So if you want to be a citizen, you should try to inform yourself in a serious way, also comparing different sources of information. You should try to understand what politicians are doing. You should also, as a sort of duty to defend your freedom, put pressure on these politicians.
Thank you very much for your time. So you listen to Rethinking Climate. You can find us on social media and on YouTube. Thank you very much.